Hey everybody, it's Coach Moylan from Lebanon Trail. I'm here to guide you through your Lesson 2.1 notes on what's your social media of choice. Originally, it was supposed to be an activity where we'd split you into groups, and each group would make a list of social media apps that students might use. And then, once we made a list all together as a class, you'd say, hey, what do you think is going to be the favorite of all the students in the class? What percent do you think would choose that app? So we got together and we decided that the top 5 were most likely going to be Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and just because, it's a notable social media app, Facebook. So I think, Snapchat's probably going to be the most popular one. And I think it'd probably be about maybe less than a third. I think it's going to be close, but I think it's going to be maybe around 33% of the class. So next, we're going to collect the class data and record it in a frequency and relative frequency table. All right, so I went up and drew this up off camera just so make this video as quick as I can. So y'all can pause the video here if you need to catch up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about what these are in statistical terms, and then we're going to go through the frequencies of each and the relative frequencies of each. So when you collect data and you can sort them into 5 categories like this, or any amount of categories, but it's really just being able to split them up into groups. They're called categorical variables. So you could maybe split all of y'all into what your first 3 digits in your cell phone number is. So that's your area code, right? So a lot of y'all have 214 or something, right? So we could split y'all into different groups based on that. We could split y'all into groups based on your hair color. So whenever you can split your data that you collect from people into groups, then that's categorical variables. You can be words, they can be numbers, anything you can split into groups, anything. Now, frequency is essentially the number of people that like blank. So in this case, we just need to know the amount of people that like Twitter. So out of all the stat students that responded across the district, we have 55 of y'all that like Twitter. We have 150 of y'all that like Instagram. We have 202 that prefer Snapchat, 167 for TikTok, and bring up the rear, we have a 4 for Facebook. And so cool. Now we have that data laid out for us. There's plenty of ways you can count up these numbers, but using online software is obviously a lot easier. Now, if we want the relative frequency, one thing we need to have is our sample size. So that's usually shown by the letter lowercase n. And if you added all these up, what we would get is 578. So now we have our sample size from adding all these up. We're going to divide our frequency by our sample size to get the relative frequency. That's all relative frequency is. It's just frequency divided by n, which is your sample size. I just didn't feel like writing out the words sample size. So we could do 55 divided by 578. And we're going to get rounded 10%. Normally I would go decimal form to percentage form, but there's not enough room for that. So out of that, I got like 0.10, and then I just moved the decimal place over to the right twice to get 10%. Do the same thing here, 150 divided by 578. And you're going to get 26%. Do the same thing with Snapchat. We get 35%. Then we get 29% for TikTok. And again, we have a modest 1% for Facebook. Cool. So that is our frequency and relative frequency table. So again, frequency is just the number of people that like blank in this situation. It could also be just the number of people that have blonde hair, whatever it is. And then for relative frequency, it's just whatever you got for your frequencies divided by your sample size. Each of these has their own relative frequency. So no need to overcomplicate it, but they are important because we use them for two different types of data displays. So the first one's going to be a bar graph. First, you do need a Y and an X axis. Sorry, I can't draw a straight line right now. And so on the Y axis, we get frequency. And on the X axis, we're going to be getting the social media type. So with frequency, since we have a maximum of 202, I'm just going to split this real quick into sections of 50. So I'm going to count by 50s. 50, 100, 150, 200. Boom. So label that. And then on the bottom here, I'm going to have each of my social media types. So I'm going to start off with, just keep the same order, Twitter. And I am going to abbreviate these. Insta, Snap, TikTok, and Facebook. So now you just need to make bars or rectangles above each one that reaches up to how much your frequency was. I'm sure y'all have done bar graphs in the past, but we're going through this with a statistical mindset. And that just goes above 200 just a little bit. And this might not be perfect, but statistics is all about representing data in ways that you can present to other people, show people your findings. It's important to be able to do things so that other people get what you're talking about. Because if you just throw a wall of data at people in an Excel file, they're not going to know what the heck that means unless you create a way to explain it to them. And so you can do it through graphs. You can do it through certain number representations, whatever you need. So this is a bar graph. You could also put the frequencies in each one of these to make it more descriptive. You can do a lot of things here, but this is a very simple bar graph. Next, for a pie chart, hardest part is to make the circle. Okay, that's not awful. Could be better, but definitely not awful. Now, the second hardest part is dividing up the sections. I usually start with a dot in the middle and going up vertically, and then I go from the largest section to the smallest. So 35% is a little greater than a third, so I'm going to go about right here. And that is for Snapchat. and there's 35%. So you're going to divide these sections up into how much percentage of the circle it goes, of your data it was. So 29% is a little bit less than a third, but a little greater than a quarter. So I would say about right here. So that's TikTok at 29%. Next up, we have Instagram coming in at a little bit greater than a quarter. And then we got Twitter and Facebook left. I'm going to make sure I save a sliver for Facebook here. This one's going to be for my Twitter, abbreviated, and that's at 10%. And then if you can't fit your data in there, I can just draw an arrow or something. So that's Facebook with 1%. Boom. So that is, that's not perfectly proportioned. So that's why I think it's one of the harder parts of doing a pie graph or a pie chart. Yeah. So this gives us two ways to look at the same data. One way, we get to see the actual numbers behind each category. The other, we just get to compare the sizes of each category to each other. In a more succinct way. So, I can see that this is the part of this entire circle. This is a part of the whole circle. Or I can even see these two sections have a lion's share of the entire circle. Here, you can't necessarily see that. You can kind of assume it, but this gives a much better visual for that. And that kind of gets into this next section here, where what's the difference between the bar chart and the pie graph? Well, in really simple terms, you can display multiple things here. You can display frequencies. You can even do averages. You could even do percentages. So really, bar graphs are kind of like, they can be used in multiple different situations. Just depends on really what you're looking for in your visual representation. Now with the pie chart, the best thing about it is that you can compare a part to a whole. Kind of like what I was talking about. Or parts, if you wanted to compare Snapchat and TikTok versus everything else. Now, the second question here is the Pareto chart. Or Pareto graph, whatever you want to call it. So what that is, in really simple terms, it's not that complex. It's just a fancy name for an ordered bar graph. So if we put Snapchat first, TikTok second, Instagram third, Twitter fourth, and left Facebook and last here, that would be a Pareto chart. Super simple. So really, it's a fancy name for an ordered bar graph. That's really the big key here. But y'all, that's it for me. If y'all got any questions, make sure to reach out to your teachers. Y'all have a fantastic weekend. And if you're in my class, I will see you on Monday or Tuesday.